Welcome to episode 152 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. I have been watching a couple of television offerings that seemingly have nothing in common, but they connect for me through one of our most lethal human behaviors. The two shows are Sins of Our Mother on Netflix and The U.S. and the Holocaust on PBS. These two shows seem to be wildly different, one from a very personal story and another international. They are each horrific in their own ways, and I don't mean to compare the scope of the horror between one and the other. What connects them for me is the underlying ability we have as humans to find it within ourselves to dehumanize other people so that we will fit in and be accepted by others. This dangerous tendency, in my opinion, is way worse than the 7 deadly sins that we have discussed in the past. It is worse because it is part of our wiring that is connected to survival. The 7 deadly sins are just the character flaws that we are given to, but they are not necessary to human life. You can live a life without lust. You can live without gluttony, greed, and sloth. You will feel fine if you dodge the flaws of wrath, envy, and pride. None of those choices are central to staying alive through your connection with others. They may feel necessary, but they are not. They are just choices that get out of control. Frankly, your life will just be better and more peaceful if you don't indulge in these excesses, though that is easier said than done. But we are wired to survive by attaching to other people. We are wired to seek the approval of those who raise us from infancy. If we can't do that, we run the risk of dying, since we are incapable of doing anything for ourselves. We come into this world not being able to take care of any of our own needs. We will remain in this state to varying degrees for the first quarter of our lives here. We need other people to survive. We need for them to like us enough for them to want us to survive. Once we are grown, we don't lose the need to be accepted. Our need just fans out to other people, the people who will employ us, the romantic partners who will want to engage with us, the neighbors who accept us instead of running us off with fire and pitchforks. There is never an end to the need to be accepted by other people. So we cling to one another in varying relationships, forming this group and that. We belong to a family group, a friend group, a work group, a community, a country, and so on and so on. Maintaining your position in all of these different groups is a lot of emotional labor. It feels good to belong. It gives us a shortcut in defining ourselves, offers a sense of self that we can feel comfortable with, and provides that warm glow that can come from the acceptance of others. Life is simpler when you belong. You can take all of your social cues from the other members of the group. They will offer the guardrails of what is right and wrong. You feel like they will have your back and keep you safe. You are no longer alone. In exchange, you are expected to give all of that back to the other members of the group. You are to keep them feeling comfortable. You are to admire them. You are to agree with them, no matter what. And you are to have their backs should anyone from another group take them on. Your innate need to belong is fueled by one enormous fear: the fear of being cast out, the fear of your group rejecting you. Our wiring equates that with probable death because of the way our original societies were formed. In the early days of people on this planet, if you were cast out, you would die. And here we are, all modernized and such, and we still have this same wiring: the fear of being cast out. One of the inherent problems with becoming part of a group, being one of us, is that you then feel the need to see those who are outside of your group as them. It always devolves into us versus them. This would be fine if we were capable of sticking with the live and let live concept, but we aren't always that evolved. We somehow feel threatened that others believe something that we don't. So we feel the need to discredit them. We feel the need to diminish them so that we seem bigger, better, and more right. There are many people who do not feel secure enough in what they believe to allow others to believe differently. They need instead to wipe those people out. Unless you are a complete sociopath, you probably aren't comfortable with the concept of killing another person. It just isn't in your nature. But what is in your nature, or in the nature of some, is the ability to decide that another person is not, in fact, a person. You can decide that they are subhuman. Then the rules no longer apply. This seems so outside of what anyone's experience might be, but it really isn't. Somehow, the need for the approval of others has flipped a switch in people and enabled them to kill their neighbors and kill their own children. Well, it is obviously more disturbing when people kill off an entire group of people. It is deeply unsettling when someone is capable of needing the approval of someone else to the degree that they would kill their own children. You are supposed to love your own children more than anyone else on earth. So it is impossible to imagine putting the approval of anyone else above that physical and psychological bond. But it happens. During the Holocaust, Jewish people had the experience of their friends and neighbors turning on them in a sudden and violent manner. This kept the neighbors in good stead with the Nazis. The very people who had once been friends and neighbors were suddenly turning them into the authorities, attacking them, and robbing them of their belongings. I try to wrap my head around what a betrayal of that magnitude, what that must be like to try to process. We think we know people. We think we understand the terms and conditions of our relationships with them. And then all of a sudden, they are out to destroy you. And not because you have done anything to them. They want to destroy you because a fiery politician has convinced them, through his incendiary speeches, that you are not a human. You are simply a subhuman problem that needs to be eradicated. So then you try to leave the country that wants to destroy you, but you literally have no place to go on the entire planet. Honestly, I can only take about a half hour of the U.S. and the Holocaust at a time, because it is so overwhelming to see what people have gone through and to see the horrors of what people can do to one another. But I will finish it. It is my responsibility to do so. If they could go through all of that, I can surely sit in the comfort of my own home and bear witness. It is also my responsibility to watch it because the parallels between what happened in Nazi Germany and the rise in authoritarianism, both here and around the world, are impossible to overlook. There is a playbook. It is pretty much being followed step by step. I've got to imagine that there were an enormous number of Germans following the end of Hitler's reign who wondered how they had gotten from the point of provocative speech to the unthinkable destruction of their neighbors and ultimately themselves. It seems impossible, but it's not. We humans are very complicated beings who have the potential for harboring very disturbing thought patterns. We are sitting ducks for those who know how to craft a narrative that will take us from being mildly disgruntled to then the dehumanization and scapegoating of others, and keep ramping it up to the point where we can torture and murder one another. It is the darkest form of manipulation, and it is a tale as old as time. As much as we would like to think that this is no longer possible, that we know too much now to fall for the same thing, that is not true. We really need to wake up to the language that is being thrown about these days and the actions of those in power who seek to denigrate and destroy those who do not see the world as they do. Always listen for the dehumanization. It is the beginning of the slippery slope. Give no power to anyone who reveals the darkness of their soul through this type of narrative. It can get so much worse than we can imagine. Thanks for returning for another week of Rebirth Revolution. Rebirth Revolution can be found on all the podcast apps, the music apps, and full episodes play on our YouTube and Facebook pages. You can find all episodes on rebirthrevolution.com. Please download, rate, and review whenever you can. Until next week, listen closely to what people say. Watch Ken Burns' documentary, which is streaming free on pbs.org. Stick with your COVID precautions and unpack your fall sweaters. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay strong and safe, and heads up.